I never thought my own family could hurt me so deeply. Standing there in aisle 5 of my flagship grocery store, I watched my daughter-in-law Amanda sneer at the young cashier. "That old woman is the maid. Don't talk to her," she said, pointing at me. My son David and grandson Tyler burst out laughing. Their cruel words echoed through the store I built with my husband over 40 years. They had no idea I owned the entire chain. That day, I made a decision that would change everything. The $42 million inheritance I planned to leave them suddenly felt like rewarding betrayal. My journey to owning a grocery empire began in the small town of Millfield, Pennsylvania. At 19, I took a job as a cashier at Wilson's Market, a tiny neighborhood grocery store where I earned $3 an hour. I met Frank during my second week when he came in to buy bread and milk. He asked me out right there at the register, and somehow I found the courage to say yes. Frank was ambitious, hard-working, and believed in me more than anyone ever had. We married within a year, and when old Mr. Wilson mentioned retiring, Frank convinced me we should take out a loan and buy the store. "We could build something special together, Marilyn," he told me, his eyes bright with possibility. "Something that could last generations." That first store nearly broke us. 18-hour days, leaky roof, ancient equipment that constantly needed repairs. We lived in the tiny apartment above the store to save money, falling asleep to the hum of refrigeration units. But slowly, customer by customer, we built a reputation for quality and fair prices. When David was born, I worked with him strapped to my chest. Customers loved him, and he became our unofficial mascot. Frank and I agreed that everything we built would one day belong to him, creating a legacy for our family. By the time David was 10, we had expanded to 3 stores. When he was in high school, we had 10. Frank had a gift for business, and I had a way with people. Together, we grew Millfield Market into a regional chain with 42 stores across 3 states. We never moved out of Millfield, though we did eventually buy a comfortable house on Cedar Street. Nothing extravagant, but it was home. Frank always said, "We sell groceries to regular folks, Marilyn. We should live like regular folks." David, however, developed more expensive tastes. He went to an Ivy League business school, where he met Amanda. The first time he brought her home, I was nervous about our modest house and simple ways. "Mom, this is Amanda," he said, presenting the elegant young woman with perfect hair and a dazzling smile. "It's so wonderful to meet you, Mrs. Harmon," Amanda said, giving me a warm hug. "David talks about you and his father constantly. I feel like I already know you." I was charmed by her politeness, her interest in our business, the way she helped clear the table after dinner. Frank was more reserved in his judgment. "Pretty girl," he said that night as we got ready for bed. "Seems to come from money. Not sure she understands what it took to build what we have." "Give her a chance," I replied. "She makes David happy." The wedding was lavish, more Amanda's style than ours, but Frank and I were happy to give our son the celebration he wanted. Afterward, David insisted on joining the family business, and Frank created an executive position for him. I noticed David rarely visited the store floors, preferring the corporate office we had established in the city. When Tyler was born, I was overjoyed to be a grandmother. I dreamed of teaching him about the business from the ground up, just as David had once learned. But as the years passed, those opportunities grew scarce. Amanda always had Tyler enrolled in activities, camps, special programs. He's so busy with soccer and piano and his advanced learning classes, she would explain when I asked to spend time with him. Maybe next weekend? Next weekend rarely came. Frank noticed the distance growing in our family. "They're raising him differently than we raised David," he observed. "Not sure the boy will ever understand the value of hard work." When Frank was diagnosed with cancer 6 years ago, everything changed. He fought hard, but the disease was aggressive. During his final months, he became concerned about the future of the business. "David's never had to struggle," he told me one night. "He doesn't understand what it means to build something from nothing." And Amanda, "What about her?" I asked. "She's been different since we told them about the diagnosis. Watch how she looks at everything in the house, like she's already deciding what to keep and what to throw away. "Frank, that's not fair," I said, though I had noticed it too. "Promise me you'll protect yourself, Marilyn. And the business. We didn't build this for them to tear it apart." I promised, but in the grief that followed his death, I found myself increasingly isolated. David and Amanda rarely visited unless they needed something. Tyler, now 12, seemed uncomfortable around me, often glued to his phone when forced to visit. Last month, I overheard Amanda on the phone in my kitchen. "It's exhausting pretending to respect his mother," she said to someone. "I mean, she dresses like she still works behind the register. You should see her house, stuck in the 1980s. David says we just need to wait until she's ready to retire. But honestly, how much longer can that take?" I stood frozen in the hallway, her words cutting through me like knives. Was this how my daughter-in-law truly saw me? Is this what she said to my son? That's why I decided to visit our flagship store unannounced last Tuesday. No special outfit, no alerting management. I wanted to see the store as customers did, remember why Frank and I had started this journey. I never expected to witness my own family's betrayal in aisle 5. The incident replays in my mind like a movie I can't turn off. I had been quietly shopping, picking up ingredients for banana bread, Tyler's favorite when he was little. The store was busy, typical for a Tuesday afternoon. I noticed them before they saw me, Amanda's voice carrying across the produce section as she complained about the arrangement of the organic apples. "Honestly, this display is atrocious. Someone should be fired," she said loudly, causing several customers to glance her way. David looked bored, checking his watch and nodding absently. Tyler trailed behind them, face buried in his phone. I almost called out to them, but something held me back. Instead, I followed at a distance, curious to see how they behaved when they thought I wasn't watching. They made their way to the deli counter, where Jessica, a new employee still learning the ropes, was working alone. "Excuse me," Amanda said, tapping her manicured nails on the counter. "We need a pound of the imported prosciutto, sliced paper thin." Jessica smiled nervously. "Yes, ma'am. I'll do my best, but I'm still learning the slicer." "Well, learn faster," Amanda snapped. "We don't have all day." I felt my chest tighten. This wasn't the polite woman who had charmed us when David first brought her home. This was someone else entirely. Jessica carefully sliced the prosciutto, her hands shaking slightly. When she presented the package, Amanda scowled. "This is too thick. Do it again." David sighed loudly. "Amanda, it's fine. Let's just go." "It's not fine. We're paying premium prices. We should get what we ask for." Jessica took the package back, apologizing profusely. That's when I rounded the corner of the aisle, now visible to them, though they hadn't noticed me yet. Jessica saw me and smiled politely. "Can I help you, ma'am?" Amanda turned to look at me, her expression shifting from annoyance to something colder. She turned back to Jessica and said in a stage whisper that was meant to be heard, "That old woman is the maid. Don't talk to her." The words hit me like a physical blow. I stood rooted to the spot as David and Tyler both burst out laughing. "Mom, seriously," David said between chuckles. "Can't you find someone else to help with housekeeping? That lady looks ancient." "I told you we should have hired that service I found," Amanda added. "At least they're professional. This one looks like she just walked in from gardening." I looked down at my simple clothes. Comfortable slacks, a button-up shirt, sensible shoes. Nothing fancy, but neat and clean, just as I'd always dressed. Jessica looked uncomfortable, her eyes darting between me and Amanda. "I'm sorry, I didn't realize." "Don't apologize to the help," Amanda cut her off. "Now, are you going to slice this properly, or should I speak to your manager?" Rick, the store manager who had worked for us for 15 years, happened to walk by just then. He didn't recognize me at first either, as I usually visited in more formal attire and with advance notice. "Is there a problem here?" he asked professionally. "Yes," Amanda said. Your deli girl doesn't know how to slice properly, and now she's wasting time chatting with some old maid instead of helping paying customers." Rick turned to look at me, and I saw the moment recognition dawned in his eyes. He opened his mouth, probably to address me as Mrs. Harmon, but I gave a small shake of my head. He closed his mouth, confusion evident on his face. "I apologize for any inconvenience," he said carefully. "Jessica is new, but she's learning quickly. I'd be happy to assist personally." "Finally, someone competent," Amanda said with a dramatic sigh. I turned and walked away, unable to bear another moment. Behind me, I heard Tyler ask, "Who was that weird old lady anyway?" "Nobody important," Amanda replied. I completed my shopping in a daze, paid at the self-checkout, and drove home with tears streaming down my face. The house felt emptier than ever as I put away my groceries on autopilot. That evening, my phone buzzed with a text from David. "Dinner at your place Sunday? Amanda wants to discuss some ideas for updating your kitchen." I stared at the message, my hands shaking. Updating my kitchen? The audacity, after what I'd witnessed today. I set the phone down without replying and went to my study, where Frank's photograph watched over me from the desk. "You were right," I whispered to his image. "You were right about everything." I turned on my computer and opened my email. There in my inbox was a message from Amanda to David that had accidentally been sent to my email as well. The subject line read, "Renovation Plans," and the body contained links to luxury appliances and designer fixtures. "These would look perfect in the house once it's ours," Amanda had written. "The place needs to be gutted anyway. I can't believe she's still using that ancient oven from the Stone Age." I clicked through the links in stunned silence. $30,000 refrigerators, custom cabinetry, a complete floor plan rearrangement that erased every choice Frank and I had made when creating our home. They weren't just waiting for my retirement, they were waiting for my death, and they couldn't even wait respectfully. Sleep eluded me that night. I lay awake, replaying not just the day's events but years of interactions in a new, harsh light. Had Amanda always treated me with such disdain when David wasn't looking? Had my son always been so dismissive of the business that put him through college, bought his first car, his first house? At 3 a.m, I gave up on sleep and went downstairs to my study. Frank had been meticulous about record-keeping, a habit I'd maintained after his death. I pulled out the file containing our most recent will and trust documents, created 3 years ago shortly after Frank passed. The provisions were generous, perhaps too generous. The business would transfer to David upon my death or retirement, with a substantial trust fund for Tyler's education and future. Various properties, investments, and liquid assets totaling approximately $42 million would become theirs, with only modest provisions for charitable donations. Frank and I had built everything with family in mind. Now I wondered if that had been a mistake. As dawn broke, I made a cup of tea and opened my laptop. Something compelled me to search for Amanda's social media accounts. I rarely use these platforms myself, preferring face-to-face communication, but I knew they could offer unfiltered glimpses into people's thoughts. What I found shattered any remaining illusions. Amanda's Instagram account was full of luxury goods, vacation photos, and carefully staged family portraits. But it was her private Facebook account, which she'd apparently forgotten to restrict from family members, that revealed the truth. Another Sunday dinner with the mother-in-law read a post from 2 months ago. Someone needs to tell her that servant mentality went out with the 1950s. David says we just need to humor her until retirement, but I'm losing my mind with the polyester and casseroles. The comments from her friends were even worse. "How much longer until you get the keys to the kingdom? Hang in there. Soon you'll never have to shop at those stores again, unless you own them. Does she really still use paper towels instead of cloth napkins?" Savage. I scrolled through years of similar posts, each one a knife in my heart. Photos of my home, with mocking captions. Jokes about my clothes, my hair, my simple tastes. One particularly cruel post showed a picture of Frank's grave with the caption, Annual pilgrimage to pay respects. One down, one to go before Operation Inheritance is complete. My hands trembled as I closed the laptop. I needed perspective. Someone who knew me and the family, but wasn't blinded by emotional attachment. I called Patricia, my oldest friend who also happened to be our family attorney. Marilyn? It's 5:30 in the morning. Is everything all right? Her voice was groggy with sleep. I'm sorry to wake you, Patricia, but I need to talk. It's important. 20 minutes later, we sat in my kitchen, coffee brewing as I recounted yesterday's events and my overnight discoveries. Patricia's expression grew increasingly troubled as I spoke. When I finished, she sighed heavily. I wish I could say I'm surprised, Marilyn, but I've had concerns for some time. What do you mean? She hesitated. There are things I couldn't tell you as your attorney without evidence, just impressions I had during meetings. The way David rushed through discussions about business succession, how Amanda always steered conversations toward timelines for your retirement, Tyler's apparent disinterest in learning anything about the company history. Why didn't you say something? What could I say? That your daughter-in-law seems materialistic? That your son appears impatient to take control? These are subjective judgments, and you seemed happy to believe in their goodwill. I massaged my temples, feeling a headache building. There's more, isn't there? Something you're not telling me. Patricia stared into her coffee cup. 2 months ago, David asked me about the possibility of having you declared financially incompetent if you made, in his words, irrational changes to the company structure or inheritance plans. The room seemed to tilt around me. What? I shut it down immediately, told him there were no grounds whatsoever. But the fact that he even asked. She reached across the table to squeeze my hand. Marilyn, I think it's time to reevaluate your estate plans, and perhaps the company leadership structure as well. After Patricia left, I called Thomas Williams, our chief financial officer, who had worked alongside Frank and me for 25 years. If anyone would give me straight answers about the company finances, it would be Thomas. Mrs. Harmon, what can I do for you this morning? His voice was professional as always. Thomas, I need to ask you something, and I need absolute honesty. Has David been involved in any financial irregularities at the company? The silence that followed confirmed my fears before he even spoke. I've been meaning to discuss some concerns with you, he said carefully. There have been expense reports with discrepancies. Nothing massive, but consistent patterns that troubling. Personal purchases categorized as business expenses. Vendor contracts renegotiated with terms less favorable to us, but with unusual consultant fees to third parties. Third parties connected to David? Another pause. To Amanda's brother's consulting firm. I thanked him and asked him to compile a complete report, swearing him to secrecy. Then I made one more call to our bank manager. Mrs. Harmon, yes, I can confirm access records to your safe deposit box. It was last accessed 3 weeks ago by Mr. David Harmon, using the key and authorization you provided. But I hadn't provided any such authorization, and the only items in that safe deposit box were family heirlooms, including my mother's jewelry that I had planned to give to Tyler's future wife someday. That night, I barely slept again, but this time it wasn't grief keeping me awake. It was determination. As I sorted through decades of memories and evidence of recent betrayals, I found a folder Frank had left for me, labeled, "Just in case." Inside was a letter, dated a month before his death. My dearest Marilyn, it began. If you're reading this, I'm gone, and you've discovered something troubling about our son or his wife. I've seen the way Amanda looks at our things, our business, our life. She wants what we have, but not what made it possible. David has always had everything given to him and never understood the value of building something with his own hands. I fear they see you as the only obstacle between them and what they believe they deserve. If I'm wrong, thank God, and burn this letter. But if I'm right, remember this. What we built was ours to give and ours to withhold. You owe them nothing but the chance to build their own legacy as we built ours. I've spoken with Patricia about contingency plans. She has alternative succession documents that keep the business in the hands of those who truly care for it. All you need to do is ask her for Frank's Plan B. Whatever you decide, know that I trust your judgment. You were always the heart of our family and our business. All my love, always, Frank. I clutched the letter to my chest and finally allowed myself to weep, not in sorrow, but in gratitude for Frank's foresight and the path now clear before me. By morning, my resolve was set. It was time for action. The next day, I arrived at Patricia's office precisely at 9 o'clock, dressed in one of my rarely worn business suits and carrying Frank's letter. I need to see Frank's Plan B, I told her without preamble. Patricia's eyes widened, but she nodded and unlocked a filing cabinet in the corner of her office. Frank asked me to keep this separate from your regular files, she explained, retrieving a sealed envelope. He said you'd know when it was time. Inside was a comprehensive alternative succession plan for Millfield Markets. Instead of passing leadership directly to David, the plan established a board of trusted longtime employees who would oversee operations. David would receive a minority stake and the opportunity to earn greater responsibility by meeting specific performance metrics. Frank created this after a particularly tense family dinner about 5 years before his diagnosis, Patricia explained. David had made some comment about how once he took over, he'd finally modernize the mom-and-pop operation, and Amanda talked about moving the headquarters to a more prestigious address. I remembered that dinner. Frank had been unusually quiet afterward. There's more, Patricia continued, pulling out additional documents. Frank established a separate trust for Tyler's education and basic needs, structured in a way that neither David nor Amanda could access for their own use. Can we implement these plans immediately? I asked. With your signature, yes. But Marilyn, this will cause a significant rift in your family. Are you prepared for that? I thought of Amanda's cruel words, David's laughter, Tyler's indifference. I'm not causing the rift, Patricia. I'm merely responding to one that already exists. By noon, I had signed all necessary documents to revoke the existing inheritance structure and implement Frank's alternative plan. I also authorized a forensic audit of all company accounts connected to David's activities. My next stop was Thomas's office at company headquarters. I rarely visited the corporate offices, preferring to spend time in the actual stores. But today's business couldn't be conducted anywhere else. Mrs. Harmon, Thomas greeted me, rising from behind his desk. I have the information you requested. The evidence was worse than I'd feared. Over 3 years, David had systematically misdirected company funds for personal use, totaling nearly $800,000. Not enough to significantly damage the company, but a profound betrayal nonetheless. I'd like you to freeze his corporate accounts and credit cards immediately, I instructed, and prepare the paperwork to remove him as an authorized signatory on all company accounts. Thomas looked shocked, but quickly composed himself. Of course, Mrs. Harmon. May I ask what prompted this? Let's just say I've been blind to many things, but my eyes are now wide open. After leaving Thomas, I made one more stop. Carol Jensen had started as a cashier around the same time I did at a different store. Through dedication and natural business sense, she had risen to become our operations director, managing all 42 stores with remarkable efficiency. Carol, I said, settling into a chair across from her desk. How would you feel about taking on greater responsibility in the company? She looked surprised, but intrigued. What did you have in mind, Marilyn? I'm restructuring the leadership. I'd like you to become interim CEO while we establish a more permanent arrangement. Her mouth fell open. But I thought David was next in line. Plans change. David has demonstrated he's not ready for leadership. Perhaps he never will be. I need someone who understands our values, who respects what we've built. By the end of our conversation, Carol had agreed to step into the role, effective immediately. The board meeting to formalize these changes was scheduled for the following morning. On my drive home, my phone rang continuously. David, likely already alerted to his restricted access. I let the calls go to voicemail. This confrontation needed to happen face to face. When I arrived home, I was surprised to find Jessica, the deli counter girl from yesterday, sitting on my porch. "Mrs. Harmon," she said, standing quickly. "I'm so sorry to come to your house, but Mr. Peterson gave me your address. I needed to apologize for yesterday." Rick Peterson, the store manager, must have felt terrible about the incident. "Jessica, you have nothing to apologize for," I assured her. "But I should have recognized you as the owner. And I should have said something when that woman was so rude to you." I smiled at her earnestness. "How long have you worked for us?" 3 weeks, Mom." "Then how could you have recognized me? Please, don't worry about it." She hesitated. "There's something else. After you left, I overheard them talking. The woman, she said something about renovating your house soon. And the man, he laughed and said, 'Mom doesn't know it yet, but she'll be moving to Sunny Pines by Christmas.'" My blood ran cold. Sunny Pines was a local assisted living facility. "Thank you for telling me, Jessica. Would you be interested in training for a management position? We need more people with integrity in our company." Her eyes widened. "Really? I mean, yes, absolutely." After Jessica left, I went inside and headed straight to my computer. A quick search confirmed my suspicions. Amanda had been researching assisted living facilities for months, even posting in a private Facebook group about transitioning difficult elderly parents. I was still processing this discovery when the doorbell rang. David stood on the porch, his face a mask of barely controlled fury. "Mom, what the hell is going on? My corporate cards were just declined, and Thomas says I'm locked out of the system pending an investigation?" I stepped aside to let him in, maintaining a calm I didn't entirely feel. "I think you know exactly what's going on, David. Is this about the expense reports? Those were legitimate business expenses. Was my mother's sapphire necklace a business expense too? Or did Amanda just want it for herself when you accessed my safe deposit box without permission?" He paled visibly. "That was a misunderstanding. I was going to surprise you by having it cleaned." "Stop lying to me," I said quietly. "I was at the store yesterday, David. I heard what Amanda called me. I saw you laugh." He ran a hand through his hair, suddenly looking less outraged and more calculating. "Mom, you're overreacting. It was a stupid joke, that's all. Amanda feels terrible about it." "Does she? Is that why she's been planning to put me in Sunny Pines by Christmas?" His shocked expression confirmed Jessica's information. "Who told you that?" "It doesn't matter. What matters is that I've seen your true colors now, yours and Amanda's, and I've made some decisions accordingly." I explained the changes to the company leadership and inheritance structure. As I spoke, David's face cycled through shock, anger, and finally desperate calculation. "You can't do this," he said. "The business is family legacy. Dad always said it would be mine someday. Your father also believed you'd respect what we built and the people who helped build it. He was wrong, and so was I. This is Amanda's fault, isn't it?" "You're punishing me for something she said." "I'm not punishing anyone, David. I'm protecting what your father and I spent our lives building. You have choices now. You can earn back trust and responsibility, or you can continue down your current path. But there will be no $42 million inheritance waiting at the end of that road." He stormed out, slamming the door hard enough to rattle the windows. Within minutes, my phone exploded with texts from Amanda, alternating between rage and sudden concern for my mental state. I turned off my phone and opened my laptop. There was one more thing to do today. I booked a flight to Italy, departing in 2 weeks. Frank and I had always planned to visit his family's hometown near Florence, but we'd always been too busy with the business. It was time to fulfill that promise. Sunday dinner arrived with a tension so thick it felt hard to breathe. I had decided to proceed with the planned family meal, though my reasons had changed drastically. This would be a reckoning, not a reconciliation. I prepared all of David's childhood favorites: pot roast with carrots and potatoes, homemade rolls, apple pie for dessert. I set the dining room table with my good china, the wedding set Frank's parents had given us, rarely used but cherished. They arrived precisely at 5. Amanda immediately launching into effusive compliments about the house she had mocked online countless times. Marilyn, the hydrangeas look absolutely stunning this year. You must share your gardening secrets. David appeared tense, his smile strained as he handed me a bottle of expensive wine. Tyler at least seemed genuinely happy to see me, giving me a quick hug before becoming absorbed in his phone again. I invited them to sit while I brought out the food. Amanda made a show of helping, carrying the basket of rolls while chattering about a fundraiser she'd attended. The governor was there, and you'll never believe it, he remembered me from last year's gala. He specifically mentioned how impressed he was with the Millfield Market expansion plans. I nearly dropped the pot roast. What expansion plans would those be, Amanda? A quick glance passed between her and David. Oh, just ideas we've been discussing, nothing concrete yet. David, darling, would you open the wine? Throughout the meal, they maintained a facade of normalcy, though I noticed David drinking more than usual and Amanda's smile growing increasingly brittle. Tyler remained mostly silent, occasionally looking up from his phone with a puzzled expression at the unusual atmosphere. As I served the pie, Amanda launched into her apparent real purpose for the evening. Marilyn, David, and I have been thinking. This house is so large for just one person, and the stairs must be getting difficult at your age. My age? I repeated mildly, serving her a slice of pie. I'm 68, Amanda, not 98. She laughed too brightly. Of course. But still, wouldn't it be nice to have a smaller, more manageable space? There's a lovely new senior community, Sunny Pines, with beautiful garden apartments. How interesting that you mentioned Sunny Pines, I said, taking my seat. I've been meaning to ask how your tour of the facility went last month. The color drained from her face. David set down his fork with a clatter. Mom, have you been checking up on us? No, David. Others have been checking up on you. It seems your activities have raised concerns among many people who care about me and about the business your father and I built. Amanda recovered quickly, reaching across to pat my hand condescendingly. Marilyn, we're only thinking of your well-being. Running a large company at your age must be so stressful. Actually, I've found a solution for that stress, I replied calmly. I've restructured the company leadership. Carol Jensen will be taking over as CEO, effective immediately. David choked on his wine. Carol? The operations director? Mom, you can't be serious. I'm the VP of Corporate Development. Yes, a position created specifically for you, which you've used primarily to develop your own interests at company expense. That's not true, he sputtered, but his eyes betrayed him. $800,000, David. That's how much company money you've misdirected over the past 3 years. The forensic accountants are still finding more. Amanda's mask of concern transformed into naked hostility. This is ridiculous. You're just a confused old woman who can't accept that it's time to step aside. Amanda, David hissed, but she was beyond caution now. No, I'm done pretending. We've waited years for her to retire, watching her parade around in those bargain bin clothes, acting like she's still a cashier instead of the owner of a multi-million-dollar business. Tyler looked up from his phone, eyes wide. Mom, what are you saying? Amanda ignored him. Do you have any idea how embarrassing it is to be connected to those tacky grocery stores? My friend's vacation in Europe, while I have to explain why my mother-in-law still clips coupons, despite having millions in the bank. I was at the store on Tuesday, I said quietly. The words landed like a bomb. Both David and Amanda froze. What store? David asked, though he clearly already knew. Flagship store, aisle 5, deli counter. Ring any bells, Amanda? Something about that old woman is the maid. Don't talk to her. Tyler's head swiveled between us. Wait, Grandma, that was you? But Mom said. I heard exactly what your mother said, Tyler. And I saw your father laugh. And you too. Amanda's expression transformed from shock to calculation. Marilyn, it was a misunderstanding. I would never intentionally disrespect you that way. Save it, Amanda. I've seen your social media posts. The ones about Operation Inheritance. the photos of my house with mocking captions, the countdown to getting your hands on my money. David paled. Mom, whatever you saw was taken out of context. Was it out of context when you asked Patricia if I could be declared financially incompetent? Or when you accessed my safe deposit box without permission? Or when Amanda researched putting me in a nursing home by Christmas? The silence that followed was deafening. Tyler looked horrified, staring at his parents as if seeing them for the first time. You did what? He whispered. Amanda recovered first, her voice turning saccharine. Marilyn, you're clearly upset. Perhaps we should discuss this when you're feeling more yourself. I've never been more myself than I am right now, I replied. And I've made some decisions you should know about. I've canceled the inheritance as it was structured. The $42 million you've been planning your lives around? It's no longer coming to you. David lurched to his feet. You can't do that. It's our money. No, David, it's my money. Money your father and I earned through decades of hard work and sacrifice. Money we intended to leave to a son who valued what we built, not one who saw it as an ATM for his lifestyle. This is illegal, Amanda sputtered. We'll contest it. Feel free to try. Patricia has ensured everything is airtight. The business will be run by a board of trustees, with Carol as CEO. Tyler will have a trust for his education and basic needs, accessible when he turns 25 and contingent upon certain requirements. Requirements? Tyler asked quietly. Working in the stores, learning the business from the ground up, just like your father should have done. Demonstrating responsibility and respect for what your grandfather and I built. Amanda stood up, knocking over her wine glass. This is insane. David, we're leaving. She's clearly lost her mind. Before you go, I said, there's someone I'd like you to meet. On cue, the doorbell rang. I opened it to reveal Jessica from the deli counter, now dressed in business casual attire. Jessica, thank you for coming. Please, join us. Amanda's face contorted with rage. The deli girl? What is this? Jessica has accepted a position in our management training program, I explained. She demonstrated something you seem to have forgotten the value of, Amanda. Basic human decency. Jessica nodded politely to everyone, clearly uncomfortable but determined. Mrs. Harmon has offered me an amazing opportunity, and I'm grateful. This is how you're going to play it? David asked, his voice dangerously low. Giving away our birthright to strangers? Not strangers, David. People who care about the business and its values. People who don't mock me behind my back or plan to ship me off to a nursing home. Grandma, I didn't know, Tyler said suddenly, his voice small. About any of this, I swear. I looked at my grandson, seeing genuine remorse in his eyes. I believe you, Tyler, which is why your trust remains intact, though with new conditions. Amanda grabbed her purse. Tyler, we're leaving. Now. For the first time I could remember, Tyler stood his ground. I want to hear what Grandma has to say. The fury in Amanda's eyes would have intimidated me a week ago. Now, it merely confirmed I was making the right decision. Fine. Listen to her lies. Ruin your future. See if I care. She stormed out, leaving David torn between following his wife and continuing to plead his case. Mom, you're making a huge mistake, he said finally. I'm your son, your only child. Yes, you are. Which is why the door remains open for you, David. Not to the inheritance you expected, but to the chance to earn back trust and respect. Your choice entirely. After they left, only Tyler and Jessica remained, both looking shell-shocked by what they'd witnessed. I should go too, Jessica said. Thank you again for the opportunity, Mrs. Harmon. Once she'd left, Tyler and I sat in silence for several minutes. Is it true? He finally asked. About Mom and Dad planning to put you in a home? I nodded sadly. I'm afraid so. And Dad stole money from the company? Yes. He looked down at his hands. I've been awful to you too. Laughing at that store. Never visiting, unless they made me. You're young, Tyler. You've been influenced by your parents' attitudes, but you have the chance to make different choices. What happens now? Now, I said. I take a trip to Italy, something your grandfather and I always planned to do. When I return, we'll see where things stand. Can I still see you, even with all this happening?" I reached across the table to squeeze his hand. "Always, Tyler. You're my grandson. That doesn't change, no matter what." After he left, I stood in my kitchen, surveying the remains of the dinner. Plates of half-eaten food, tipped over wine glasses, the aftermath of a family explosion, years in the making. Yet despite everything, I felt lighter than I had in years. The truth, however painful, had finally been spoken. The Italian countryside unfolded before me like a Renaissance painting, golden hillsides dotted with cypress trees, ancient stone farmhouses nestled in valleys, vineyards stretching to the horizon. After 2 weeks in Florence, I had rented a small car to drive to Montepulciano, where Frank's grandparents had lived before immigrating to America in the 1920s. This trip, long postponed and nearly forgotten, now felt like exactly what I needed. Distance from the chaos at home. Perspective on what truly mattered. Connection to Frank through the land of his ancestors. The small hotel I'd chosen sat on a hillside overlooking the medieval town. My room had a terrace where I took breakfast each morning, watching the sun rise over the valley, thinking about the life Frank and I had built and the difficult changes I'd set in motion. David had called daily at first, alternating between anger and desperate persuasion. When I stopped answering, he switched to emails, each one more carefully worded than the last, clearly coached by lawyers searching for any angle to challenge my decisions. Amanda had taken a different approach, launching a whisper campaign among family friends, suggesting I was suffering from dementia or depression. Patricia kept me informed of these attempts, assuring me they had no legal standing. Tyler, surprisingly, had maintained contact, texting me pictures of his soccer games and asking about Italy. His messages never mentioned his parents or the inheritance situation, focusing instead on rebuilding our relationship one small conversation at a time. On my 3rd day in Montepulciano, I visited the town hall, hoping to find records of Frank's family. The clerk, Paolo, was extraordinarily helpful, especially after I explained my connection to the town. "Harmon," he mused. "Ah, originally, Armoni, yes? I believe we still have Armonis in the region." To my astonishment, Paolo made a phone call and arranged for me to meet Sofia Armoni, Frank's second cousin once removed, who still lived in the family's original farmhouse just outside town. Sofia, a vibrant woman in her 70s with Frank's familiar smile, welcomed me with open arms and rapid-fire Italian. Her daughter Lucia translated, explaining that the family had always known about their American relatives, but had lost touch after World War II. Nana always said her cousin Gianni, your husband's grandfather, would return someday, Lucia explained as we sat in their sun-drenched kitchen. When he didn't, she expected his children or grandchildren would come instead. She waited her whole life. The revelation that Frank and I had family here, family who had been waiting for us while we postponed this trip year after year, hit me hard. How much time we had wasted, always putting business first. My Frank wanted to come, I told them through Lucia. We always planned to, but there was always something more important. Sofia patted my hand knowingly. La vita è ciò che accade mentre sei occupato a fare altri piani. Life is what happens while you're busy making other plans, Lucia translated. Over the next 2 weeks, I was absorbed into the extended Armoni family. Cousins, nieces, nephews, all curious about their American relative. They shared family stories I had never heard, showed me photographs of ancestors who looked remarkably like Frank, taught me to make pasta the way his grandmother would have made it. In the evenings, I checked in with Carol about the business. The transition had been smoother than anticipated, with most employees expressing relief at the clearer leadership structure. David came by yesterday, she told me during one call. He wanted to discuss returning to the company in some capacity. What did you tell him? That any such decision would need board approval, and that the board would want to see evidence of changed behavior and restored trust. How did he take it? Better than I expected. He seemed humbled actually. Asked if he could start by working with our accounting team to properly document all his previous financial transactions. It was a small step, but perhaps an important one. I thought of Frank's letter, his hope that David might yet learn the value of what we'd built. Maybe, just maybe, this crisis would be the catalyst for that learning. During my final week in Italy, I received an unexpected email from Tyler. "Grandma, I've been thinking a lot about what happened. Mom and Dad are getting divorced. Mom left last week after a huge fight. I'm staying with Dad for now. He's different these days. Quieter. He's been showing me old photos of you and Grandpa when the business was just starting. I asked if I could work at one of the stores this summer, and he actually supported the idea. Said it was what he should have done at my age. I miss you. When are you coming home?" I read the message several times, emotions swirling. Amanda leaving was no great surprise, but David's apparent introspection was unexpected. Was it genuine, or just another strategy to regain access to the business and money? That night, under a canopy of stars at a family dinner in the Armoni vineyard, I found myself sharing the whole story with Sofia, who listened attentively as Lucia translated. "Il denaro è una lente d'ingrandimento," Sofia said when I finished. "Non cambia le persone, mostra solo chi sono veramente." "Money is a magnifying glass," Lucia translated. "It doesn't change people, it just shows who they truly are." "What should I do about my son?" I asked her. Sofia considered the question carefully before answering. "Perdona, ma non dimenticare. Offri una mano, ma proteggi il tuo cuore." Forgive, but don't forget. Offer a hand, but protect your heart, Lucia explained. The next morning, I made 3 important calls. The first was to Carol, asking her to create a entry-level management position that would allow David to earn his way back into the company through actual work, not entitlement. The second was to Patricia, instructing her to maintain the revised inheritance structure, but to add a clause allowing for reconsideration based on demonstrated change over a period of no less than 5 years. The third was to Tyler, letting him know I'd be home in 1 week and would love to have dinner with him, and if he wanted to come, his father. On my last day in Montepulciano, Sophia and her family threw a farewell party. As wine flowed and stories were shared, Sophia presented me with an old family photograph showing Frank's grandparents before they immigrated to America. "La famiglia è la famiglia," she said, pressing the framed photo into my hands. "Distanza e tempo non cambiano questo." "Family is family," Lucia translated beside me. "Distance and time don't change that." I looked at the young couple in the photograph, standing proudly in front of the same stone house where we now celebrated, and thought about the journey they had undertaken, the legacy they had begun, without ever knowing how it would unfold. Just as Frank and I had done with our little grocery store so many years ago. On the flight home, I wrote in my journal about everything I'd experienced and learned. The betrayal that had broken my heart. The strength I'd found to stand up for myself, and what Frank and I had built. The family connections discovered across an ocean. The possibility, however fragile, of rebuilding relationships on new, healthier foundations. The woman who returned to Pennsylvania was not the same one who had left a month earlier. I was no longer defined solely by what I could give my family, but by who I was and what I valued. Not just Frank's widow, or David's mother, or Tyler's grandmother, but Marilyn Harmon, a woman who had built something meaningful and who deserved respect for that accomplishment. As the plane began its descent, I made one final decision. Regardless of how things unfolded with David, I would establish a foundation to support young entrepreneurs from disadvantaged backgrounds. Frank and I had started with nothing but determination and hard work. Perhaps our legacy should be giving others that same opportunity, rather than handing wealth to those who hadn't earned it. The seatbelt sign illuminated as we approached the runway. I closed my journal and looked out at the familiar Pennsylvania landscape below. Coming home, but to a life reimagined. A life where respect couldn't be taken for granted, but had to be earned. A life where boundaries were clear and consequences real. A life, I realized with quiet certainty, that Frank would have approved of wholeheartedly. 6 months after my return from Italy, I stood at the podium in our flagship store, now renovated and expanded, preparing to cut the ribbon on the Frank Harmon Entrepreneurship Center. The crowd gathered for the occasion included employees, community members, and the first cohort of young entrepreneurs who would receive mentoring and startup funding. Carol stood beside me, confident in her role as CEO, the company thriving under her leadership. On my other side was Tyler, now working weekends and summers at various store locations, learning the business from the ground up, just as his grandfather and I had intended. And there, in the front row, stood David. Not at the podium as he might once have expected, but present and engaged nonetheless. The past 6 months had shown glimpses of the son I'd always hoped he would become, working his way through the entry-level management position Carol had created, attending therapy sessions to address the entitlement issues that had damaged our relationship, living in a modest apartment rather than the luxury home he'd shared with Amanda, who had indeed filed for divorce after realizing the inheritance wouldn't materialize as planned. My husband Frank believed that success wasn't measured by what you accumulated, I began my speech, but by what you built that improved the lives of others. This center honors that belief by investing in the next generation of entrepreneurs who have the vision and determination to build something meaningful, even if they don't have financial advantages to start. As I spoke, I caught sight of Sophia and Lucia in the audience, having flown in from Italy for the occasion. Their presence reinforced how much my world had expanded since that painful day in the grocery store. After the ceremony, we gathered at my home for dinner. Not just family, but the extended circle of people who had supported me through the transformation of the past year: Patricia and Thomas, Carol and her husband, Jessica, now thriving in her management training program, Sophia and Lucia, bringing warmth and wisdom from the Italian branch of our family, and yes, David and Tyler, our relationship still healing, but stronger than they had been in years. The path hadn't been easy. There had been setbacks, difficult conversations, moments when old patterns threatened to reemerge, but the foundation was more solid now, built on truth rather than obligation, respect rather than expectation. "I never properly thanked you," David said quietly as we stood in the kitchen after dinner. "For what?" I asked, genuinely curious. "For not giving up on me completely. For leaving a door open, even when I didn't deserve it." He stared down at his coffee cup. "I've been doing a lot of thinking about Dad, about what he tried to teach me that I was too self-absorbed to learn. Your father always believed in second chances," I told him. "He also believed people show their true character, not when things are easy, but when they're faced with losing what matters to them. I almost lost everything that actually matters," he admitted. "My relationship with you, with Tyler, my self-respect." He paused. "The irony is, now that I've stopped focusing on the money and the status, I'm actually starting to understand the business in a way I never did before. Working up from the bottom has been illuminating." From the living room came the sound of laughter. Tyler was showing Sophia photos on his phone, likely from his recent soccer tournament where his team had taken second place. Lucia was deep in conversation with Patricia about Italian inheritance law, of all things. The house felt alive again, filled with genuine connection rather than the strained politeness that had characterized family gatherings before. Later that evening, after everyone had gone and I was alone with my thoughts, I took out the journal I'd started in Italy and added a new entry. Today marked not just the opening of the Entrepreneurship Center, but the continued opening of a new chapter in our family story. The road from that horrible moment in the grocery store to today has been painful but necessary. Frank always said that anything worth having is worth fighting for. He meant the business, but I think the same applies to self-respect and genuine family relationships. Amanda is gone from our lives, having moved to Chicago with a new boyfriend after the divorce. Her influence over David and Tyler has faded, though the lessons from that time remain important. We must all be vigilant against the entitlement and materialism that nearly destroyed what Frank and I built. The business is thriving under Carol's leadership, with a board structure that ensures our values will continue to guide decisions. The employee ownership program we implemented has boosted morale and productivity beyond our expectations. David continues his journey toward becoming the man his father hoped he would be. Some days are better than others, but the general trajectory gives me hope. He's learning the business properly, making connections with employees and customers that would have been impossible from the corporate office. Tyler has blossomed away from his mother's materialistic influence. His summer working at the stores has given him confidence and perspective. He's talking about studying business in college, but with a focus on sustainable and ethical practices. As for me, I've found a new balance. Still involved with the business as board chair, but with time for other priorities too. Regular visits with our Italian family, both here and in Montepulciano, mentoring young entrepreneurs through the new center. And yes, occasionally treating myself to things simply because they bring me joy, not because they demonstrate status or wealth. Frank would be proud of where we've landed. Not because everything is perfect, but because we faced hard truths and chose integrity over comfort. We chose to rebuild what was broken, rather than pretend the cracks didn't exist. Standing in the grocery store that day, hearing Amanda's cruel words, and seeing my son and grandson laugh, I felt like my world was ending. Now I understand it wasn't an ending at all, but the beginning of something more authentic and ultimately more valuable than what came before. Sometimes, the most painful moments are actually doorways to our most important transformations. The inheritance I canceled wasn't just about money. It was about recognizing that the most valuable things we leave behind can't be measured in dollars. They're measured in values lived, in lessons learned, in respect earned rather than demanded. That's the real inheritance I hope to leave. Not just to David and Tyler, but to everyone touched by the story of what Frank and I built together. I closed the journal and looked at the photograph on my nightstand. Frank smiling back at me from a vacation we'd taken for our 40th anniversary, just before his diagnosis. "You were right about so many things," I whispered to his image, "but especially about protecting what matters most." In the quiet of the house we had shared for decades, I felt an overwhelming sense of peace. The pain of betrayal had transformed into the strength of boundaries respected. The loss of illusions had given way to the richness of authentic connections. The ending of one version of our family story had allowed space for a truer version to emerge. That day in the grocery store had been one of the worst of my life. But without it, I might never have found the courage to demand the respect I deserved. I might never have discovered our Italian family. I might never have seen David begin the hard work of becoming a better man, or Tyler developing into a thoughtful young person with values beyond material wealth. Sometimes the most painful moments become our greatest gifts, if we have the courage to unwrap them and face what's inside. Have you ever experienced a painful betrayal that ultimately led to positive changes in your life? I'd love to hear your stories in the comments below. Sometimes sharing our experiences helps others find the courage to face their own difficult situations. If this story resonated with you, please like and subscribe to hear more stories of transformation and resilience. And if you know someone who might benefit from this message, please share it with them. Thank you for listening. And remember that it's never too late to stand up for the respect you deserve.